Today we got one word, one single word that could be the demise, the destruction of your relationship. I know y'all trying to make it right, and whoever you with, people get together because they want to be together. They want to stay together. Nobody gets to. Well, let me not say that. Most people don't get together for the sake of getting going apart. Most people get together because they want to make something last. They want to see something healthy, something beautiful, something that ends forever and ever. They know they want to till death do us part it. But there's one word that we're going to discuss tonight that can destroy, that can literally be the death of your relationship. And then two words that can save it. Man, it's the L to the Z here to help you be all that God wants you to be. Welcome back to the 808s and Politics podcast, where we talk about pop culture and politics from a Christian-based, faith-based worldview, so that we can get our lives together, so that we can live the life that God has and wants for us. And I know we all want God's best, but to have God's best, we got to understand God's way and do it God's way. And if you're not a faith-based person, tonight, I believe that your relationship can still benefit from what I'm about to tell you. Now, I will come from the Bible. I will share a couple of scriptures, but these are Proverbs. These are scriptures that are wisdom. That's just good, godly, general wisdom. And I believe if you start implementing what we're going to talk about tonight in your relationship, in your present relationship, or even in your future relationship, some of y'all might not even be in a relationship, or this might be something you know somebody's in a relationship. You might want to share this one. You might want to pass this one on. I want to encourage you right now, before we jump into it, to like and subscribe to this channel. If it's all right, give it a like, all right? And I had something else I was going to say about hitting the subscribe button. But if it ain't nothing, hit that subscribe button, okay? Help me out so we can grow this channel, so we can continue to give you great faith-based content that will be life-changing and transformative for you. I'm about to share something that has been transformative to my life. My wife and I have been married for 13 years. And I'll tell you, if you know somebody who's been in a relationship that has ended up in a marriage, because we're in a culture right now that doesn't really have a high view of marriage, that doesn't really even respect marriage. In a lot of ways, we're trying to tear marriage apart from what God intended it for it to be. But in spite of that, when we think about, that around 50% of marriages, whether people are Christian or not even Christian, like 50% of marriages aren't working. Like, that's a pretty stark statistic. That's a crazy thought, to think that most relationships that are marriages, people committing their life to one another, going through the vows of, hey, till death do us part, I'm going to be with you forever, and then I leave you. Man, like 50, half. Like if you think about it in terms of what's the probability, you have a 1 out of 2 chance of not making it. And then on top of that, this is why this is so important to me. Because on top of that, the rest of y'all are in relationships that aren't end up in marriage. So overall, you can say the majority of relationships don't work. So if you find a person that has a relationship that ends up in marriage, and it is a healthy marriage, and I'm not talking about one of those healthy marriages that is only healthy when you see them out on the street, right? And then, the man's talking behind a woman's back to his friends, and, she's talking behind his back to her friends. Like, if they talking behind their back about their spouse, like, that's not it. That's not what we're talking about, okay? I'm talking about healthy marriages. You will know because you will hear what that person talks about to you about their spouse. Are they saying healthy, life-giving things? How much they enjoy being married to them? How much they enjoy their company? How much they enjoy and value that person? If they're talking like that, and they've been at it for a while, stick around that person, because they are an expert in marriage. More than likely, they are an expert in the topic. And if you want to make something that works, you need to be around people that know how to make it work, that have the proof in the pudding. Stop being around with my wife. My wife and I, we have a relationship channel called Charity and Laban. I have the link in the description below. And she likes to say, do not listen to single Pringles. Like, don't listen to somebody singer. They don't have the proof. They don't have the testimony to be able to tell you how to make a relationship work. Be very weary and skeptical. There's a lot of people on YouTube that have a lot of advice, and it might be good advice, but if they haven't been able to put it in practice and apply their advice, they probably can't really give you good advice. Okay, so be mindful of who's giving you advice and what advice that you're talking to. Now, the best advice I can ever come up with is not the things just that I've lived, but the things that I've lived that come from Scripture, that come from the Bible. And so I will use the Bible, but like I said, if you're not a Bible person, you're not a faith-based, you're not Christian, not a Christ follower, it's okay. Hang on, because these things are going to help you out. So here we go. One word that will destroy your marriage and 2 words that can save it. One word that will destroy your relationship and 2 words that can save it. What's the one word? Starts with a P. No, not that one. Scratch that from your mind. One word. Pride. Pride can and will destroy your relationship. I don't care how long y'all been together. The longer you've been together, the worse it can be. It can literally be the thing that really breaks the camel's back. And the crazy thing about pride is a subtle thing. It's not like you walk around and you just feel like you're prideful. Like, who thinks that they're prideful? The essence of a prideful person is the fact that they don't realize that they're prideful, right? Like, that's really, like, if you want to define it in like layman's terms, it's a person who everybody can tell is prideful, but them. Like, they can't even tell that they got this going on in their life. I want to give you more of a textbook definition here. And let me drop this on the screen. This always happens when I start to do the stream. It's like, okay, can I get the things on the screen? Here we go. Pride. Pride is the quality. This is the textbook definition. The quality of having an excessively high opinion of oneself or one's importance, aka arrogance or vanity. Quality of having an excessively high opinion of oneself or one's importance. In a relationship, a person is prideful when they always seem to have all the answers. When their partner or spouse maybe has a different way of doing things, and they only want things done their way. They're prideful. They are very prideful. Or when you argue, if they are always right about everything, they're prideful. If when you have conflict, they cannot admit that they were wrong, they are prideful. You want to know a prideful person? Ask somebody how their last relationship ended. Like, what was the cause of the ending of your last relationship? If they give you an answer, and that answer doesn't include things that they did that were wrong, they are prideful. They have an excessively high view of oneself. Listen, how do we know? Because of the simple fact that if 2 people are in a relationship, now, rarely is it only one person's fault that relationship doesn't work out. It's a relationship. It requires the input of 2 people. So both people, when it breaks up, both people have a stake in the game. Now, there are some situations where I will say, like, if adultery or if cheating is the reason that 2 people broke up, like, hey, I'm just not going to accept that, then yes, the person who was the offender, it's their fault. Like, that is their fault. But prior to that cheating happening, I'm sure that there can be some things in the relationship that person who was cheated on should be able to point to that they could have done better in their relationship. So if you're dating somebody, or if you're thinking about dating somebody, or going into a relationship or going into a marriage with somebody, that is a question that you need to ask. And just really push the issue. Like, what are the reasons why your last relationship didn't work out? if they had a last relationship. Now, I just want to give a shout out to people who might be watching who are just like saving themselves. Like they're the people that are like, listen, I know that God has one person for me, and I'm just gonna wait for that person. And they just waiting for like I'm just gonna save myself in all regards. I'm not gonna be dating around and doing all this stuff. I'm gonna trust that God is gonna send me the right person. If you out there, put it in the comments. More power to you. I wish I could have done the same. How do I know what I'm talking about as it relates to pride? I've been there. I've been in those relationships. I've been in those relationships. In my own current marriage, there are times, most of those times, thank God, are in the past, but there are a lot of times where I'm a very prideful man, where things are going bad or things were going bad, there was conflict, and it was always her fault. Now listen, you might have good reason to feel like it's the other person's fault. Okay, that's the essence of an argument. That's the essence of conflict. The essence of it is selfishness. I like to say that, you know, this is not no hard statistic, but from my observation in any relationship that I've been in that are romantic relationships or otherwise, 99.9% of the time when there is conflict, the root of that conflict is selfishness. And the root of selfishness is essentially pride. I want my own way because I feel that I deserve my own way. And what you're not saying that's underlying all of that is I'm better than you. I am better than you. If you've been in a relationship like that where you was always at fault about something, drop it in the comments. My wife will tell you, back in the early days of our marriage, man, oh man, oh man. Like I used to just get on her about everything. And I didn't realize how prideful of a person I was. And it started to become a thing where my wife didn't really feel that she was, you know, valued. She often, and she would say these things. I'm like, well, how could you say that? How could you say these things? And because it only would come out when we were arguing. So when times were good, like everything was good. She didn't have nothing to complain about. But when there was conflict, like it would expose these things that are underneath the surface that are going on that I wasn't aware of. And the crazy part is she would keep telling me. She would tell me over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I would hear it. I would repeat it back to her. But I didn't understand the underlying thing that she was saying. Now part of our struggle was actually communication, right? And within that, sometimes it's hard to communicate. And for us, it was challenging for us to learn how to understand each other's languages. And so 13 years later, yes, we understand each other a lot better. Sometimes I just see the vibe that's going on. And I'm like, okay, you know, whatever I got to say or whatever I'm thinking, it can wait. And sometimes you might have a thing that you need to say, or you might observe a flaw in your partner or in your spouse where you're like, man, like they really need to take care of that. But sometimes you might not want to be the person that tells them that. I like to say this, and here's part of the faith-based aspect, the Christ-following aspect. If you're in a relationship, especially if you're in a relationship with another Christ follower, your first point of attack for issues that you feel things need to be changed, things about that person's character that need to be changed, and you have good right and you're looking out for them, you want the best for them, you might want to begin by praying. You might want to begin by praying about it first. And sometimes we like to take the reins. And in essence, a part of the essence of pride is because we exhibit pride in our relationship with God. Now, for those of you who are out there, who are listening, who are not Christ followers, who are not, you know, faith-based people, Christians, listen. Your lack of a relationship with God is all because of the same reason. It's because of pride. I did a whole video. I think it was episode number 2 or episode number 3 of 808s and Politics about pride, and it was really related to Pride Month, but I was really just talking about the essence of our relationship with God. When God says, "Hey, this is how I made you to be, and this is what I ask of you, and what I require of you, and this is what holiness and righteousness looks like," and we do an opposite thing, we in essence basically tell God, like, God, I don't trust your way. God, I don't think your way is right. And we put ourselves above God. Like, God, yes, I know you say this in your word, but I got a better way. I'm going to do it differently. The essence of our starting point with God is from a place of pride. I reject your way, God. And so in every relationship, we can find hints of pride. Now, I wanna take a second now to show you some of this in scripture. Okay, so this is gonna help you out. If you're not a Christian, it's okay. Just hang on, because I think you're gonna benefit greatly from this too. All right, so let's pull it up on my trusty dusty iPhone, and it is a scripture that's in Proverbs. It's Proverbs chapter 16. It's verse 18. I'm going to share a few scriptures actually from Proverbs. All wisdom. This is God's wisdom, right? And I think it's going to be a blessing to your relationships. Check it out. It says, y'all heard this. Pride cometh before a fall. I know y'all think that someone like Oprah or somebody like that is the one who came up with it, or some guru out in the world. This is actually the wisdom of God, okay? This is, I believe it's like Solomon that wrote it, okay? And it says this: pride goes before destruction. Some translations say pride comes before a fall, and haughtiness before a fall, okay? So, in other words, if there is a lot of pride in a situation, in a person, and a person is coming to the table with a lot of pride, what the outcome, what's going to result from that is going to be a fallout of sorts. It's the nature of pride. The essence of pride is that it doesn't bring things together. It pushes things, and it pushes people apart. It separates. That's the nature of pride. Okay? But I want to give you a few more scriptures, because I want to take you to now the 2 words that could save your relationship, or that could save your marriage. Okay, so let's continue reading now. I've highlighted everything in blue that I want you to see. Here's another wise saying, another proverb, another piece of godly wisdom. It says, the wise are known for their understanding, and pleasant words are persuasive. Woo, I love that. The wise are known for their understanding, and pleasant words are persuasive. In other words, in your relationships, as it relates to your relationships, you need to start to focus on understanding. How can I do a better job of understanding what my partner or my spouse is saying? Right? If you want to be a wise person in a relationship knows how to understand the other person. This was life-changing for me. I started to observe my pride, and I started to really work and pray about it and be like, God, help me. I'm like really prideful. I'm like really prideful, God. Because my wife would always say to me, she would be like, you think you know everything. And I'll be like, okay, so I take that phrase, you think you know everything, and I ponder it. And what comes out of my mind is, I don't sit around thinking I know everything. No, I don't. I don't think I know everything. And so for the first few years, my wife would always say, you think you know everything. And I'd always respond with, why would you say that to me? I don't think I know everything. Little did I know that my wife was really trying to say, bro, you are really prideful. You are really prideful. You just really like to have things go your way. You just really like to have the last word about everything. Or anytime I have a problem, you always got to answer. I wish you would just listen to my problem sometimes. Sometimes I want to come to you with a problem, and it took a year to start to really communicate it in this way. But if I were wise, I'd have taken more time to ask more questions to say, hey, you keep saying that I think I know everything. What do you really mean when you say that? Right? Instead of being offended by it, a wise person would try to understand. What do you mean when you say, I think I know everything? Because I don't think I know everything, but you keep saying it to me. So there's something in there that you're seeing that maybe I'm not aware of. Maybe there's a blind side that I have. I need you to help me out because I don't like when you say that. And I really want to understand what it is that I'm doing that makes you feel that way. And then you can have a healthy conversation when you approach it from a place of understanding. When you approach it from a place of understanding. I used to work at this corporation, and one of their sayings, and they probably got it from some other guru, but it was seek to understand before being understood. And as men and alpha males, all the alpha males in the manosphere out there, everybody wants to be an alpha male. Listen, you don't have to assert whether or not you're an alpha male or not. Just be who God calls you to be. That's it, and you'll be good. All right, you'll be a great man. Be a man of God. Just be that. But out in the world, there's this idea that, men have to assert themselves and they're trying to get women to submit. And listen, if you're a man of God and you're doing things God's way, a woman won't have no problem submitting to you. You'll never have to talk about her submitting to you. She will willfully do it. She's wired that way. Okay? God has hardwired her that way. Now, yes, there's flaws in that and there's life experiences that kind of take away from that. But trust me in this. You don't ever have to tell a woman to submit. I did a video about that too. I forgot what I called the video, but I did a video about submission. And I don't even think submission's in the title anywhere. Oh yeah, it is. It's actually on the thumbnail. It says how to get her to submit. Okay? I want y'all to go and listen to that because I give you a better definition of submission than you've probably ever heard. I didn't make it up, but you've probably never heard a really good, solid, godly definition of submission. And yes, the concept of submission comes from the Bible, but the picture that the Bible shows is a picture of willing submission, not forced submission. And so go back and read that. But there's this whole thing in the manosphere and in a lot of men where we feel like, people, like we have to assert ourselves or we have to kind of have our way and dominate things so that we can, be the leader. And it's just not the way of God. It's not the way that we see Jesus doing it. Jesus led by serving those and washing the feet of those he was leading. So it's a completely opposite paradigm, but he still got the results and even greater results than a person who leads by dominating or forcing their way. Like it's mind blowing. And so that's why I love to use the Bible. Aside from the fact that of my Christianity and my faith in Jesus, aside from that, if I didn't have that, I'd still probably go to the Bible and be like, that Bible's just right. It just works. But we don't have to force our way into these things. We can seek first to understand before being understood. Don't try to make your point. Try to understand her point. Or vice versa. Try to understand his point. But men should really lead in this way. Men should really be leading in this way, trying to be more understanding. And then pleasant words, the rest of the scripture says, pleasant words are persuasive. So if you're trying to communicate something and you want to see a change, or there's something that you believe that is a tragic flaw in your partner, in your spouse, in your wife or husband, whoever, girlfriend, boyfriend, man, like you don't get it. You don't get that thing to change by drilling in and just telling them what all the bad things about them. It takes pleasant words. Listen, like, hey, here's all the good things I see inside of you. Listen, try this for a change. Sit down and have a conversation with your significant other and only focus on affirming them. My wife and I, we did this from time to time. We call it affirmations. We lay in a bed and we just affirm each other. If you want to see some things shift, and this was a part of what I wanted to talk about, but it's coming up tonight. If you want to see some things shift, learn how to just give affirmation to your spouse. Watch how they'll respond to that. And you know what I believe will probably come out of that? And I'm not talking about, because there's this whole controversy about men that are simps and they'll just do anything and, women just walk all over them. That's not what I'm talking about. You shouldn't be anybody's doormat at any point in time, okay? But what I am talking about is what the Bible says. Says it right there. Pleasant words are persuasive. And so lead with pleasant words and make it a habit that you're talking and expressing more pleasantries than non-pleasantries. So that when there is a time to maybe discuss something that is a little bit more serious, that requires some attention, man, you've invested, that you've made an investment in her emotional bank, where now she may be ready to hear it because you've said so many good things, and the bad thing might, it's like, or she may even ask you, you tell me a lot of good things about myself. What are some things that you think I could change about myself? Now, don't take that, if that ever comes up, don't take that as your opportunity to say everything that you think can change. Be wise about it. But pleasant words are very persuasive. A few other things that I want to drop on you before I tell you the 2 words that could save your marriage or that can save your relationship. Okay, here's a couple other things. And this is just echoing this. So going down to verse 23, from a wise mind comes wise speech. So once again, communication, but not just how to better communicate, but how you can take responsibility for the things that come out of your mouth and how powerful those words that you choose to use can be. From a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. So it's echoing what was said before. And then it says this, kind words. Kind words. Watch this. Kind words are like honey. I don't know about y'all. I ate pancakes just this morning. I do not like to eat honey. Excuse me. I do not like to eat syrup on my pancakes anymore. I went from Aunt Jemima to Miss Butterworth, and then I would rarely use honey because honey was like slow and sticky and expensive. And then I don't know what changed, but then I started using honey. There is almost no better sweetener than honey. Honey is like the best. And the beautiful thing about honey, I think, is that it's made by bees. It's like this organic sweetener that's really sweet. It's really sweet. And so I had honey on my pancakes this morning. Anytime I'm eating pancakes, or anytime I'm eating waffles, or anytime I'm eating biscuits, I want me some honey on them. But the Bible is telling us that kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy to the body. If you have a relationship that is failing or that is falling apart, start to drip some honey into it. Kind words. Just change your word choices. Stop focusing. Listen, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you want it to work. You're not seeing the change that you want to see by telling her all the things that are wrong. Well, why don't you start telling her all the things that are right? It ain't gonna kill you. But I'll tell you what it'll do for her. And the Bible tells you right now, it's sweet to the soul. It'll be sweet to the soul. You know what the soul is? The soul is like your mind, your will, and your emotions. So in other words, your kind words will have this kind of effect on your partner. It'll be healthy for their thoughts, healthy for their mind, okay? It'll be healthy for how they feel about themselves, their emotions. It'll be healthy for how they feel about you. And it will also impact their will, the things that they do willingly. It will impact what they choose to do willingly. It's really simple. Kind words. Try it. Try it. And I'm not saying fake kind words. I'm not talking about inauthentic kind words, because some of y'all out there just heard me say, just make up some stuff. That is a lie. That's the opposite of what we're talking about. If you love somebody and you want to give them kind words, but those words aren't true, then you don't. You're being unloving to them because you're telling them things that aren't true. If you love somebody, you tell them the truth with love. Okay, so that's a lot that I just said in those 2 sentences, but I want you to go out there and try some kind words. Right? And it might take you writing a list. Sit down, because it may, for some of y'all been in this at a long time and you don't even see nothing good no more. And I get it. It gets like that sometimes. But sit down and write a list of things, of all the reasons why you did get with this person. And you'll find a ton of kind words in there. Because maybe they've seemingly changed over time, but I would rather say maybe the relationship and how they've been with you and how you've been with them, maybe the relationship has changed them. And this is a powerful thing. Because you look at relationships, oh, you've changed. And sometimes I say that to my wife, because my wife used to be overly kind. She used to be overly helpful and giving of herself to people. And when we got married, that was one of the qualities that I loved about her. The fact that she was just so, generosity in its pure sense. That was my wife. She was like generous in a pure sense. I was loving it. It was one of the reasons why I married her. But because she was so generous, I would also see that at times people would take advantage of her. So the way that I tried to help in the situation so she wouldn't get taken advantage of was by telling her not to be generous to people like that. So I really stifled one of her best qualities. So much so that she became even less generous with your boy, with me. And I'm like, yo, you know how I used to be. Like 13 years later, like we still have this conversation like, yo, I remember when you used to. And she's like, yeah, it was your fault. I'm like, what do you mean it was my fault? Because of the words I would choose. I would tell her, yo, you're letting people use you. And those may be true. But if I were wise, I would have been telling her, babe, man, you're such a generous person. Man, I wish I could be as generous as you. You're so generous that sometimes people don't even know how to act. And they take advantage of your generosity. But you know what, babe? Don't ever stop being generous. Just be a little bit mindful when people might be taking advantage of you. See what I'm saying? That's different than, yo, you always letting people take advantage of you. You need to stop just always giving yourself to people. You always doing stuff for people. They'll never return the, and I would say these things, and it literally, over the course of 13 years, it reshaped one of her best qualities. Man, and I look back and I'm like, what did I do? If I would have known at the time that that's what was happening, I wouldn't have done it, of course. But, hindsight, as they say, is 2020. But guess what? You get to benefit from my hindsight. Hindsight is 2020. So your foresight in this area is now 2020 if you listen. Hey, I got a scripture for that. Let's just scroll up a little bit. Those who listen to instruction will prosper. Those who trust the Lord will be joyful. Right there, verse 20, it says it right there. You want a good, prosperous, healthy relationship? Trust the words of the Lord. I'm trying as best as I can. I pray before I do these podcasts. I pray before I come on this live stream. I really say, God, help me to really just share your word and just really communicate it in a way that people can understand. That's it. So I'm trying to really follow what God is saying and how he can help us. Okay, now let's get to 2 words that can save your relationship. Now, I did a video a few days ago about Will Smith and his apology. And go back and watch this video, because inside that video, I go basically almost statement by statement that Will Smith made. He did a really short 3, 4, 5-minute apology to Chris Rock. And I went almost, statement by statement and really broke down all that is good about his apology. And there's some people that are out there that are talking about, oh, well, a little just too late. Well, I disagree. And here's why I disagree. In human terms, yes, man, he should have apologized a lot sooner. But there's another part of it where the fact that I believe his apology was as authentic as it was, it really only came from time. It took time, I think, for him to realize and have the courage to say some of the things that he said. Because he didn't just apologize to Chris Rock. He apologized to Chris Rock's family. Then he apologized to his own family. And he apologized to his kids. He ain't do nothing to them. But he acknowledged that his actions caused things to flow down that affected and impacted all of their lives in a negative way. He went on to apologize to the other people who came to receive their award that night. Like, he's like, I stole the show and I ain't stealing it in a good way. He ain't say it like that, but, so I thought he gave a thorough apology that we could all learn from. So why did I say this? Because the two words that could save your relationship, you might learn to need to start saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So one word that'll destroy your relationship, pride. Two words that could save your relationship, I'm sorry. And maybe you're not at that point right now where you feel like, well, that's not going to change anything. But I want you to try it because it could probably save your relationship from getting to a place where your relationship is falling apart. It literally is that powerful. Here's how powerful it is. Early in our marriage, my wife and I would have conflict, we would disagree, even when we were dating and when I was courting her and we were engaged to be married. Even in that stage of our relationship, there were times where we would have like smaller conflicts. And I remember one day, she was going back to her crib. I walked into the train station. We were like arguing probably like the whole way there or something like that. And I remember just being really frustrated because I felt like she wasn't listening to me or we were just on two different pages about whatever it was. So what I do? I sent her on her way. She got on the train. We said bye, whatever. And I was going up the escalator here in New York City. We live in New York City. That's why I have the escalators and trains. That's what I'm talking about. And going up the escalator, I remember praying to God because I was so frustrated and I didn't like the feeling that I had that this is a woman I'm going to marry and like we're arguing. I hated that feeling. And I remember praying to God. This was the prayer. And I pray this prayer now, 13 years later, like all the time. God, if she's wrong, change her heart. But God, if I'm wrong, change my heart. It was life-changing. Because one, it disarmed my pride. My assuming that because I'm me, I'm right about the situation and she's wrong, which is why we're arguing because I want her to see it my way. But then it also put it in God's hands. And when you put it in God's hands, a funny thing happens, right? And I learned this really early in my, like way then. That was the first time I prayed that prayer with what will be my future wife, with Charity. And the very next day, watch this. We were talking and she was like, she didn't say I was wrong, that she was wrong, but she basically corrected herself. Now, here's the crazy part. Throughout the course of our early years, and once we got married in our early years, we just learned kind of how to apologize to each other. But it wasn't like a regular thing. It took a while. And I remember one day, like we were arguing, and I remember thinking to myself, or praying, and God was showing me that I was wrong. And I remembered this feeling of, man, I don't want to apologize. And then I finally got the courage to apologize. And then I apologized. I said, you know what, babe, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Now, there were things that she did and said in that argument that I don't even remember what we were arguing about, once again. But there were things that she did in that argument that were wrong. Because I deserve an apology for some things. She was clearly wrong about some stuff. Because we used to like name call. We used to do like stupid stuff. Oh gosh, let me just say this right now. If you want a healthy relationship, I'm gonna tell you a couple things just to cut out before I get back to this. Cut out name calling for one. If you're married, cut out the word divorce. Don't ever say that. Number two, because then it forces you into figuring it out and working it out. Okay. All right. Back to what I was saying. I digress. I went and I apologized to her. And would you believe this woman ain't apologized back to me? And I felt like such a sucker. I felt like, how could she? I finally gathered all my pride and came to that point where I could be like, I'm sorry, and take responsibility for the fact that I own part of our relationship going off course on that night. And I couldn't even get a I'm sorry back. And then the next day I was hoping I get it. I still ain't get it. And then a couple days, I just never got a sorry. And then like, I noticed that became a pattern. We would have conflict. We would argue. And then I would pray. And God would always show me the things that I did wrong. And then I'd go apologize. And I'd make those things right. And she was loving it. But she was not taking responsibility for her own actions. Now, I know I'm talking to y'all in the manosphere, because I know y'all like this. The whole manosphere, a lot of it is just centered around, oh, women won't take responsibility and be accountable, et cetera, right? I get that. So when I talk against the manosphere, I'm not talking from a place where I don't understand what you're talking about. I'm talking more from a place of, so what? Like, you have to suck it up, and if you follow God's way, you'll understand, like, there's a process to things. And God can work more powerfully than you can. So the way you want to try to control the situation and get her to do X, Y, and Z, God can do a better job of that. And so I started noticing my wife wasn't apologizing back. I started praying. I started praying for her. God help her to see that she's wrong. So early on in our relationship, I was able to pray, and God would show her where she was wrong, and she'd come apologize. And I was like, oh. But then, when it started to deal with my pride, when I was wrong, and I had to go and apologize, all I wanted was equal response. And once again, my pride came back into the situation. Because I'd be frustrated. And I was really frustrated because I had an excessively high view of myself. Once again. Like, see, I'm the one apologizing. And I'm elevating myself above her. Not just realizing that maybe she just doesn't recognize what she's done wrong. And I had to go back to that simple prayer. God, show her where she's wrong. And I started, because I tried to tell her, well, you ain't apologizing. Yeah, that just doesn't work. But when I started praying about it, to this day, I tell you, man, it's been life-changing. We have learned the power of I'm sorry. And we've both learned how quickly conflict can be resolved by saying I'm sorry. And sometimes the conflict isn't about, it may be like, let's say it's a conflict about money and how money's being spent or budgeted or whatever. But through the conflict, you do and say things that are inappropriate, or that are disrespectful, or that are judgmental, or just whatever. The reason why there's conflict, yes, the money issue needs to be resolved. But the things that happen to try to resolve the conflict that are inappropriate and wrong, you gotta make right. And I'm sorry is the easy way to do it. And it's not one of them sorries where it's like, hey, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Like that kind of I'm sorry. I'm just saying sorry because I want to get over it. Right? So you can leave me alone. Or so we can just get on better terms. Like when we're talking about I'm sorry, in other words, what you need to be communicating is I'm full of sorrow. Like I feel really bad about the things I've said to you. I feel really bad about my tone of voice. I feel really bad about the names that I called you. I feel really bad about how I'm thinking about you. I feel really bad. You get what I'm saying? Like, feel it. Because it's not really sorry. You're not really sorry if you don't feel sorrow. This is elementary. Like, I tell my kids this. Don't just come and tell me I'm sorry, Daddy, if you don't really feel sorrow for what your disobedience was to your parents. Like, don't just say sorry. Nobody wants your vain sorry. Nobody wants that. But most people can accept a truly heartfelt expression of sorrow. And that's what the words I'm sorry should really mean. And what you should really mean when you're saying it. And sometimes when I tell my wife I'm sorry, especially like early on, when I first started really practicing saying I'm sorry, she would be like, yeah, whatever. I'd be like, babe, I'm really sorry. She's like, yeah, whatever. Because she's so hurt by the things that I was saying and doing. And so it was very hard for her to even accept my apology. And so I had to learn, like, okay, just I'm sorry wasn't enough. So in those moments, so 13 years later, I can say, babe, I'm sorry. And she believes me because she knows when I use the word sorry now, like I really am expressing my sorrow. But when I first started using it, she didn't understand all that. So I had to say I'm sorry and then say and explain my sorrow. Like, babe, I really feel bad. Like, I really shouldn't have said this. And then go through the things that I said. You know, or maybe I lost my cool. And I had to really go through, like, babe, I really shouldn't have done that. And then it's not like, hey, I'm never going to do this again. Like, don't make promises or don't say sorry and then keep doing the same thing, right? That's vain. That's vain. You're just using it. You know, that's like abusing the word sorry. Don't do that. Just don't do that. That's a poor way to lead a relationship. That's a poor way to lead a relationship. If you're going to say sorry, really mean it, and really try hard not to continue repeating the same offense. I'll give you an example. Give me 1 second. Gotta clear my sinuses. Okay. I shouldn't even said that. I told you exactly what I was gonna do. I might as well let you hear it too. I should have said, give me a second. You know, just muted it. But then I told you, and then like you probably just pictured it, and so it probably wasn't a good picture in your mind. But anyways, I'll give you an example. My wife hates when I say certain things, right? So if I be like, you know, I'm trying to use one that won't really expose her too much, or that she'll be okay with me sharing. She hates when I say, you're acting crazy, right? That's like a trigger word for her. And I didn't understand that. Like, I don't agree with it. I don't understand it. I'm like, why would anybody be offended by anybody saying that? Like, you just did something and that was crazy. Like, that's all I mean by it. But she hates when I say it. And so we would argue, and then she'd get really upset when I say that. And then I'd be like, okay, you know, I'm sorry. Like, no, I'm really sorry for saying it. But then the next time we have an argument, I'd say it again. Because I feel justified, because I felt like, okay, well, you just did it again. Did something that was worth you saying it. Long story short, I had to really learn that I really need to bite my tongue. And if I really mean sorry for saying that, then I shouldn't continue to do it. Anyways, it's the L to the Z here to help you be all that God wants you to be. Camera's running out of batteries. I hope this was a blessing for you tonight. I hope you've got something really good, live, transformative from it. Drop in the comments. Try it out. Try it out. Deal with your pride. Start saying I'm sorry. And see how it will affect you. Like the channel. Subscribe to the channel. And join me again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. I try to set them up for 10 p.m. I've been really late, but I'm going to continue to try to hit that 10 p.m. mark. But just keep in mind, as I get this ball rolling, it might be a little bit later. Join me at 10 p.m. Set a reminder so that when I come live, you can join us. And I'll see you next time. Peace.